The thing about crypto, because it's such a nascent market, it's like an unlimited pie. We've only begun. TAM will only get bigger and bigger and bigger. We love JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs getting into crypto because it just validates the space. It's good for everyone when we have this even playing field. The mission is to increase economic freedom in the world. Everything we do is in service of that. Most Americans wouldn't have cared about the SEC chair, but we and others made it such an explicit issue. Trump was at the Bitcoin conference and he said the first step I would have would be like to fire Gary Gensler.
On day one, I will fire Gary Gensler
and the whole room erupted. But that wouldn't happen in another scenario. And we don't take any of it for granted. The road is just beginning now. We have a ton of work to do. It's still day one.
So the reason I was in San Francisco was I was doing an interview for an executive position for one of our portfolio companies, reporting to the founder. And I would probably say I spent at least 70% of my time with the candidate and at least 70% of my time with the founder, figuring out, can these two work together?
I think I actually think that is the elusive, magical thing that is so rare to find. And when you find the chemistry, and by the way, it doesn't just magically come either.
Yeah.
You actually have to work on it really, really hard. And so both parties have to be willing to work on the relationship really, really hard to make it work. So like that has been a huge part of the Brian Emilie kind of thing.
But do you think that when you started working with Brian, don't you think there's at least a minimum threshold of compatibility?
Yeah, for sure.
Like, so, you have a similar worldview?
Yep. Yeah. But there are so many moments I can point to. I mean, I still remember them because they cause emotion in me.
Tell me.
And Brian and I have a bond that is unbreakable. When I first came to Coinbase, it was very, very much a steep learning curve in terms of just like, how do we relate to one another? So one example is I was presenting something for the very first time to the board in front of Brian, obviously. And Brian has a very specific style about you put it on the Google Hangout, you present to the group, you make edits live in real time so that everybody can actually see.
Like on the slide.
You can see them as they're happening. We're not just talking about it verbally. We can actually see them. Like he very much feels religion about that. And I wasn't doing that. I didn't know.
Instead, you're presenting a slide.
Right. Mm-hmm. And so after the meeting, he said, that was not a good presentation. And I remember like tears, like I was smarting from it because it like hurt my feelings big time. And I recognized that was something that was really important to him. And so in order to be successful with him, like I had to get compatible with that style. So those are I have a zillion examples of that. And the other thing I would say that was like a really big thing that we invested in is we have a coach. And the coach is not like a traditional Silicon Valley, make you feel good kind of coach. He's a rip the Band-Aid off, say the thing that you don't want to say in the room, like tears kind of thing. And we both did that. We both struggled with that. But the thing that I really appreciate is that Brian actually invested in it. Like it's not fun, easy stuff. Mm-hmm. It's like therapy. Yeah. So you're going to these things and you're kind of like, oh my gosh. But when you get through it, you're like, oh, we just went through another hurdle together. We're stronger.
Do you think that if you were to go, I mean, you probably get a call a day about another COO job somewhere you probably get the coolest calls. I'll tell you that. Do you think that the way that I define it is like the pain tolerance to work on the relationship, right? To maybe concede to so many of the unique quirks of the founder, Do you think like if you were to go do it again, do you still have that? Or are you like too big time? Like, are you just like, you know what? I've already done this. I can't imagine having to contort myself in a way that serves the founder like again.
It's more that I am so fired up every single day to continue to be at Coinbase. It'll now have been about 7 years, that I can't imagine wanting to be anywhere else. And I think one of the things, this goes back to the first thing you were talking about, is I have so much respect for Brian Armstrong. Like things like Mission First, which was no politics at the office, which were done at a completely different time. Like today is such an interesting day for us to be talking because Zuck came out with this free speech thing and like the tide is turning.
He did it when it was easy to do.
It's very, very, very hard to do this in 2020, which is when Brian first came out with it. And he felt...
What is it? Can you define what it is?
Mission First, which is the company, Coinbase, to work at the company, you have to be aligned to serving the mission. We don't need political activism or anything else in the company because we have such a huge mission. And by the way, we didn't make this clear when you signed up to join Coinbase. So if you disagree, which we fully respect, we will give you a great exit package. Like it's very, very adult and mature, and you can walk out and we can all be friends and we can all agree this wasn't the right fit for you. And now anybody coming into the company knows very clearly how we operate. And so it's been such an incredible win. Obviously, I think all the other tech companies and other companies recognize this now, but it was extremely hard to do then. We had 10% of our employee base leave. We look back on some of the old... You
guys got killed.
We got killed. Look back on some of the feedback we got from like other CEOs and like just you're horrible people. You have no idea what you're doing. It was hard. I was scared to death.
Did you support that decision?
I supported it in my heart, and I supported Brian. Was I scared? I was totally scared because I was like, "This is the first of its kind."
You were getting killed too.
We were.
It wasn't just Brian.
Yeah, of course, we were all getting killed. And I look back and I'm like, I love working for somebody who is so true to his belief system and, frankly, doesn't care if people don't agree. Like, doesn't care that it's not a popular thing. It's very refreshing and very freeing to work in that environment.
Coinbase has 5,000 people now? What's the number? Ish?
We're a little less than that, yeah.
And you or Brian, are you still doing every interview?
We're not doing every interview.
At the end of every...
I review every single candidate that is up for a job at Coinbase.
Everyone?
Every single one. And
when you review, what's the difference between interviewing and reviewing?
Reviewing is looking at the interview feedback, looking at the flags that came up during the interviews, reading the scores from the cognitive test and the cultural test, because we have both of those for every new employee that comes in, and reviewing their profile. You can imagine, we recently had a post about this. We're focused on meritocracy. We're focused on grit, hence this podcast. We are less focused on the caliber of the school or the caliber of the so-called institution that you were at before. In fact, many of the best people come from startups because they just knew how to hustle and grind.
So today, still, every hire you're reviewing.
Brian asked me last week, he was like, I just wanted to check in with you and see, like, do you feel like, we can sustain this as we grow bigger? And I was like, to be clear, I never want to give this up. It's such an incredibly important thing. When I worked at LinkedIn for Jeff Weiner, it was this thing was like ingrained in us, which is like, talent is the number one operating priority. Talent is the number one operating priority. Talent is the number one operating priority. It's everything. And so if we don't have that deep focus from the very entry point, and we don't send that signal also to our hiring managers and our recruiters about the type of talent. By the way, we're one of the only companies hiring right now too, right? So AI companies, Coinbase, some others, but we should be pretty strict in the way that we're hiring people and making sure that we have a really, really high bar for anybody who comes in.
How much of a week do you spend doing that?
I am like a speed reader. That's like one of my hidden talents. And so it doesn't actually take that much time. I skim things really quickly. I'll usually post in the channel asking the recruiter something like, why does it look like this person job hopped so much, or something like that? Get a little bit more clarity. And then this week, there's an EA who's coming through the pipeline and she looked really good, but she's leaving her job after a year. And I said, why is this person leaving so quick? And they were like, well, because the person who she works for wants her to do more personal assistant stuff. Okay, that actually makes sense. Check.
Are there any hires that you or Coinbase have made that you don't think that most high growth startups would make?
Yeah, I think it happens all the time. I mean, this is like my big lesson in my career is the people who are great at Coinbase might not have been great at LinkedIn, might not have been great at Warner Brothers and so on. Like it's a different skill set. It's a different ethos. I think that we value very deeply grit and resilience because we have very high volatility in crypto. You have to be prepared for the worst. I mean, post FTX imploding, anybody who came in around that time, I don't even know why they stayed. It's miserable. You feel like you're being painted with the same brush as the bad guys. You have Elizabeth Warren and others just talking about crypto with, painting us with one brush of just all being fraudsters. You have a pointed campaign by it's Operation Choke Point 2.0, which is essentially the FDIC and others telling banks not to serve crypto companies. I mean, I didn't know if our fiat rails were going to be cut off. It is not for the faint of heart. And so sometimes when you're testing these people, it's like, I don't care if you were like the absolute god at Google for 20 years. You're probably, that was like up and to the right, up and to the right, up and to the right, up and to the right. It's a different thing. You have to have hustle and grit and you have to be able to navigate the highs and lows and sail through.
I've heard you describe the year after FTX as the hardest year of your life. FTX, well, do you want to describe what happened and then what ultimately ended up happening as a result of that to Coinbase?
Yeah. I mean, FTX, SBF, Sam Bankman-Fried was a fraud. And he operated such that he was commingling funds and kind of bolstering the look of things between the exchange and what was essentially a hedge fund at the time. And they went bankrupt like that. So they're the darling. By the way, one other funny part of this story arc is that as FTX was growing, we were getting shit from everybody you can imagine.
Why aren't you growing this fast?
Why aren't you growing this fast? How can they operate with 100 people? And we would do these like insane bottoms up exercises where we're like looking at it, like a consultant, like, I think we need this level of compliance to be able to make sure that we're compliant. Like, I don't know how to do it any other way. I don't know what they're magically doing, but it doesn't make sense. So we feel like idiots some of the time, like we're like getting, all
and
this.
You and FTX were the big players.
We were the big players. But he was kind of this darling, like people just loved his like schmoozy, affable ways. And so we were dealing with that. And then all of a sudden the bankruptcy happened and all the fraud allegations came out and it was like the whole industry was tarnished. Like it was like a very bad low point. Politicians came out, criticizing crypto, saying it was a fraud, all this kind of stuff. The thing that was hardest for me was that we were a public company operating in the US. They were an offshore entity that were complying with no rules. And so like just to be painted with that same brush when we had gone through so much to go public, to be audited, to just be this company that went through so much and operated in the US, which is so much harder than operating offshore. It just felt so bad. But again, if you look at how things kind of happened, Brian shrugged, was like, we got to just keep building, right? So I'm having like anxiety about like, okay, our fiat rails could be turned off. The politicians hate us. We're not going to get legislation. There's no clarity. There's regulation by enforcement. We had an SEC Wells notice imposed upon us.
What does that actually mean?
It means that they suspect that we are operating illegally parts of the business.
By the way, you're dealing with all this stuff, right? Like, I imagine, yes, obviously Brian is very involved, but like you're...
And Paul Graywall, our chief legal officer, our policy team. I mean, it was all hands on deck.
Yeah.
I think there are moments in a company's evolution where you will have some crazy, crazy things to deal with. And I think it's like there's this concept called like the crucible of leadership. Like it's going to show whether or not you can make it to this next level. So we know all this bad stuff is happening. The press is awful about crypto. The politicians hate crypto. We're getting these enforcement inquiries. Our stock price goes all the way down. It's like
down
to like $40 a share.
like 80% down.
We're like the laughing stock of everything. And we like got our act together and we're like, okay, we have no choice but to just keep building and to make our case to the public. So one example, which I think was really brave at the time, again, and you'll see now that banks and other traditional institutions are following suit here, but like we were truly the first. And I don't give myself like a pat on the back for that. I think it was like necessary at the time because I don't think anybody would have picked up our story. But we had a wonderful advisor, Chris Lehane, who ran comms and policy at Airbnb, and he's now at OpenAI. And he came in and he helped us tell our story. So one thing was Paul, our CLO, and Brian went live right after the Wells notice. And they said, like, we just want to film ourselves talking about why this is total BS. And the TLDR here is like, we went public through the very auspices of the SEC with substantially the exact same business in 2021 that we were then sued by the SEC for. Like, it's a very easy argument to understand if you can hear directly from the company. And I think the big thing that we've all learned over the last several years is that mainstream media is obviously tainted, obviously biased. And when you can go direct with your messaging, you can be clear, you can be crisp, you can present the facts, and you have a much more direct relationship with the users. And I think all these things that we did ended up helping us and helping the industry.
And Emily, you mentioned Operation Choke Point. I think maybe folks in tech might know that, but a lot of folks don't actually know what that is. My question is, well, first, can you explain it? Second, has that actually been corroborated? Like, is there data that shows that this is actually happening or happened?
Yeah. So Choke Point 1 was essentially this concerted effort by the regulators back in the day to discourage banks to work with industries that they deemed unsavory. We know that was true back in the day. Operation Choke Point 2.0 was the next version of that, which was when we know for a fact that regulators and others put pressure on a whole host of different banks and bodies to discourage them from working with crypto companies. We have asked for FOIA, which is the Freedom of Information Act, with the FDIC and other bodies who are involved in this. And by the way, like I would say, Coinbase was deeply affected by this, but the whole ecosystem was really, really affected by it. Coinbase was big enough to kind of like keep cobbling together pieces.
Have come out and said we couldn't get banking licenses.
No, of course. So of course. So why would you found a company or build a company in crypto if you were spending 30 to 50% of your time on begging for banking rails and on lawyers to help solve this puzzle of regulation by enforcement? It's just like, it's a recipe for disaster. Why would you not build in another sector? So it completely destroyed so much of the development that was happening. And either those founders just decided to do something else or they moved offshore. So yes, it has been proven. One of the things that has come out of this is that there's heavily, heavily redacted documents coming out of the FOIA requests. And so we're pushing to get many of those pieces unredacted, but it's clearly essentially a campaign of we deem crypto to be a very risky activity. We discourage the banks from directly forming relationships with these crypto companies to serve them with fiat rails. And so you basically kill off all of their ability to operate as a company.
And this was 2023. This was your 2023.
2023, yeah. And there was a host of different things that came out. Like I think in October 2023, there was something from the Treasury that also, the OCC, that discouraged the use of crypto. I mean, these were kind of like, it got bolder and more brazen as this went on. And Elizabeth Warren was very open about, the crypto bros and something like the shady developers and things like that in the crypto ecosystem. And so there was just this feeling of constantly like being the target of these people.
Honestly, did you ever think about quitting? Did the sun ever get a little too hot?
So one thing, once you've been through the worst, which by the way, I've been through the worst multiple times here because now I've been through
the worst of the worst.
The worst of the worst. Yeah. No, I never.
Just your stock price going down.
So I will never quit a company when it's like down.
Yeah.
That like, and so when I first joined, I think I told you this story last time. I signed my letter in December 2017 when the crypto market was peak.
Yeah.
And then I joined in March 2018 from LinkedIn, which had been just this delightful journey. And like within a few months, you could just see everything was starting to fall. And I was like, I mean, I know my friends from LinkedIn were like, oh my gosh, poor Emilie. Why did she make such a stupid career choice? I felt like an idiot. I didn't know enough about crypto. We also had a confluence of things that I would never recommend for any startup, which was there was a ready-made like 15-person brand new leadership team at Coinbase. Nobody had ever worked together. Nobody had ever worked in crypto before. And it's like a recipe for disaster. Revenue falls, usage falls, people start getting aggravated and emotional. People quit, people get fired. It's like really, really tense. And I looked around and the people who I thought were the smartest in the entire company, people like Balaji Srinivasan and Brian and Dan Romero, who's another founder who came from Coinbase, like they were like sitting there happy as clams. And I was like, what is going on? They were just building. They were just like, this is awesome. Like all the phonies get out of the space. We want to focus on missionaries, not mercenaries. Like this, we love these periods. This is great. Like we get to build and don't have all this noise in the system. So I followed their lead. My whole life has been about just following the smartest people in the room. And I just grinned and bared it. And then when things came back up, it felt so gratifying. And so I knew from those things that we're just going to continue to get some of the biggest struggles. And like, as we navigate them, we'll get stronger and stronger.
Emily, can I ask you, like, when these things are happening, do you still like feel it inside? Do you still internalize like, oh my God, we got a Wells notice? I can feel my heart like in my mouth.
Yes.
Do you still feel that?
100%. I'm like a very sensitive person. So I feel things like very, very deeply. And I remember when I was a kid, like if a nun said something to me the wrong way, I would like tear up and I couldn't let it go. And that was happening in my career. Like I remember very specifically like moments in my career where somebody would say something off-putting and it hurt me. Like I was like, oh my gosh. And so I feel everything, whether it's personally or like just the whole ecosystem. Like it gives me a pit in my stomach. One of my mentors is Kevin Scott. He's the CTO of Microsoft and he was the head of engineering at LinkedIn. And one of the execs had been mean to me and yelled at me about something. And like I was in Kevin's office at LinkedIn and I was kind of tearing up and he's like, what are you tearing up about? And I was like, he was mean to me. And he's like, do you think that the work you presented was the best work you possibly could present and the right recommendation? I was like, yeah. And he's like, so who gives a fuck? Like, what's wrong with you? And he told me a story about how he had been extremely sensitive in his career. And when he was a PhD student, they would just all like tear each other apart and tear each other's work apart. And there was a moment where like, he was like, I either have to be about the work or I have to be about reacting to what everybody thinks about me. And I'm going to be about the work. That completely reframed things for me. Like, I don't actually think people would think the way I operate today, like, oh, she's a sensitive person. I'm an extremely sensitive person, but I've focused on making sure the job gets done. And I use the sensitivity for things like reading the room and knowing when somebody's agitated about something when other people can't see it. Or I think my secret superpower is I can identify talent really quickly. Like I know in 2 minutes if I like a candidate or not, because I feel that they either have it or they don't for Coinbase. So I try to channel something that I think was like hugely negative for me in certain parts of my life to something that I think is actually helpful. But then in these moments, I feel it really, really hard. And like, I get nervous. This idea of going direct, again, it doesn't sound crazy now. it was crazy to do in 2023 because you have some
Going
of the
direct,
most
meaning messaging.
Yeah.
Messaging what you actually
Yes.
felt.
So, most of the people that we spoke with, like very, very well-regarded CEOs from TradFi and so on, they were like, you don't do that. Like, you don't antagonize your regulator. Like, the SEC will always win. So don't antagonize them. You're just kind of like, we kind of have to go out. And so it's like everything's a learning journey.
You all were like, your chief legal officer, like all of you were going straight after them. Like, hey, this doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Yep.
Like, you were flying to Washington. You were like actively campaigning against the SEC as they're actively, like, you were going to war with the government.
Yep. And what we have to remember is in 2023, it was an incredibly different environment. Like, the overregulation was clearly happening across all levels, but nobody was really free to say stuff. I think it was a combination of like chutzpah and like just maybe like desperation. They were like, we have to go tell our story because if we don't, nobody else will. But yes, we went to DC and we talked to people. And like, when I look back on that, I look at some of the people in DC, like Patrick McHenry, who's outgoing the House of Reps now, or Richie Torres. Like, they took positions, pro crypto positions, when it was deeply unpopular to do so. And so I just have a deep respect for these people who were like, we get it. Like, we got to figure out a plan here. One of the things that we did to really get our act together was we recognized that beyond going direct, we also needed to make sure that we were electing pro-crypto politicians. And so we had like two other prongs of the strategy. One is Fair Shake, which is a super PAC that we and A16Z and Ripple and others have donated to. And the whole idea is we're nonpartisan. We just want to elect as many pro-crypto politicians as possible. That has been hugely successful, like just by any measure. And then the other was investing in grassroots. There's a nonprofit called Stand With Crypto. And we started investing and making sure there was a big grassroots presence. And so people are showing up at town halls and talking to their local politicians about owning crypto and not having any certainty about the regulatory clarity. And so you have tops down, bottoms up. It's just, it came together in this beautiful way. And I think it really resonated in this past election. It was a huge victory.
Is it surreal now? Like, seeing our president, or our soon-to-be president, going to the crypto conferences and like beating the drum of crypto.
Yeah.
You know, and like Dogecoin, like it's just like everything is going crazy. Like all of a sudden the vibes have shifted.
Yes.
From what we just described over the last 30 minutes to what is happening now, it's like a complete 180.
It's shocking. The other thing that's shocking, if you think about it, when Trump or others talk about the outgoing SEC chair, Gary Gensler, like, most Americans have not known the SEC chair's name. Most Americans wouldn't have cared about the SEC chair, but we and others made it such an explicit issue. And then I think a lot of other companies got on board with challenging the SEC after we did, because it was so obvious that they were overreaching. It was so obvious that they were regulating by enforcement when there wasn't actually any legislation to articulate what the rules of the road were. And so that was kind of like, I think, an eye-opening moment when Trump was at the Bitcoin conference and he said the first step I would have would be like to fire Gary Gensler. And the whole room erupted.
Crazy.
But that wouldn't happen in another scenario. So everything feels surreal. Yeah. It's kind of crazy. And we don't take any of it for granted. Like, there isn't legislation as of today. So like that the road is just beginning now. We have a ton of work to do. It's still day one.
Your stock was up over 120% over the last year. Bitcoin is obviously up. Coinbase, ironically, through all of this, is basically one of the only cockroaches left to survive. I say that endearingly. Like, everyone else has basically been killed or not even allowed to start. And so in some weird twist of fate, maybe this was all really bad for the industry over the last couple of years, but boy, it sure has turned out pretty good for Coinbase. I think a lot of people, again, now that the vibe has shifted, really look up to you and the role that you've played in what I think will be looked back on in history as one of the most important tech companies that we've ever seen.
Thank you. I think we will be too.
And you are right at the helm of it. I think on the outside, everyone now thinks that you're in quite an enviable position You're never going to have to worry about money ever again. You've seen this incredible ride. If iron is forged in the fire, you're covered in a coat of iron. But I'm curious, like, maybe personally, do you feel like if you knew what you know now, you could endure the cost that it took on you personally, whether that's at home, whether that's how often your heart would feel like it's in your mouth, whether that's your health, like knowing what you actually know now? Do you feel like you could do that again? Was the mission worth it?
Yes, it was 100% worth it. Like, I am a better person because of this. Like, I am stronger. I am more fearless. I feel more confident in myself and in the company. Like, it has so many incredible far-reaching effects. I feel so happy that we've created something that I hope will be very sustainable. I hope will be a very generational company. So it was all worth it, and it will all be worth it every single time. Like this, again, this is just the beginning. Like, I think it only actually gets harder from here, because it's like the onus is on the industry to make sure we hold politicians' feet to the fire, that we actually have legislation passed, that we actually have rules of the road. And by the way, when these fair rules of the road come in, which will be awesome, there will be a plethora of new competitors, and we welcome that. Like, one of the things that I think was really interesting about joining Coinbase was, you know, I come from a world where it's like a zero-sum game of MAUs or DAUs. Like, one LinkedIn DAU is taking away from a DAU at another social media site or so on. It's like a constrained thing. The thing about crypto, because it's such a nascent market, and like the way Brian thinks, is that it's like an unlimited pie. Like we've only begun. So the TAM will only get bigger and bigger and bigger. And the more entrants there are, like, we love Robinhood, or we love Schwab, or we love JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs getting into crypto, because it just validates the space.
Yep.
It's just more users and more usage and more goodness and more ecosystem players and more startups funded and more innovation. So, like, it's good for everyone when we have this even playing field. Like, we do not want to take all the spoils. We have no interest in that.
Can you tell me, what is the actual tax? I feel like I get a pretty good view of what it really means to build a company. I don't think I even actually know what it means to build Coinbase, going through what you all have gone through over the last few years. Can you maybe, like, personify what is a tax that you feel like you pay? Like, what is the exhaust of building this company for Emilie?
When you ship a product at a tech company, you can ship it in a form that is okay to have bugs. You don't, 99% of the time, don't need to think about regulatory clarity. So it is a very, like, freeing thing, because you are solely focused on creating and shipping something that delights a user, and you'll be able to tweak that and work on that over time. Coinbase has a wide array of products: the brokerage, the exchange, the custodian, the wallet, and so on, Base, which is our L2. Imagine every time you want to ship a new feature, you have no idea. You have to go through tons of case law to try to figure out how might the SEC or another regulator, like, contort itself to critique this and say that we're doing something illegal, because you know that that's how they're looking at things. So an example is, as we add new assets to the exchange, we believe that we are adding commodities to our exchange, you know, just like Bitcoin and ETH. But there is no rule of the road on it. And so the SEC could just choose to, as they did, tell us that we had unregistered securities as opposed to commodities on the exchange, because they deem them to be that, even though there's no written record of how that could be the case. And so every time it feels like you are shipping something and you're trying to do as much due diligence finding as you can, but there's not actually, like, anything that tells you what you should or shouldn't be doing. Then they go after you, and then you have to shut the product down. We had to turn off fees in the wallet because they went after a wallet. They went after the assets that we were adding. They went like the case is huge. And so it's extremely challenging to operate in that way. You feel like you're focused on this puzzle that doesn't actually have the pieces together, instead of like absolutely focusing on the most secure, beautiful user experience for your customer, which is what anybody actually wants to do, right?
Do you do goals? Do you do like annual goals?
Yeah. I learned so much from Jeff Weiner, and I feel like one of the seminal pieces that he wrote, which I recommend any founder, any operator, anybody, anywhere read, is essentially about how you create like a mission, vision, values, OKRs, kind of like everything should map to everything. So for Coinbase, as I mentioned, like the mission is to increase economic freedom in the world. So everything we do is in service of that. And then we have these goals. So for example, it might be to be number one in a certain area. We then map OKRs, quarterly OKRs to that. So if you are working on a tiny little feature this quarter, you want to be able to map that ultimately to like the bigger goal of getting to number one in the market. And then also the goal of increasing economic freedom in the world. We're very, very focused on it. In every town hall, we talk about the achievements that we have, like the OKR achievements relative to that mission, so that everybody knows why they're so important. And I know that like every town hall, I'm sure there's a bunch of employees who are like, oh my God, are we going to hear about OKRs again? But they're so important. And I don't care if it's OKRs. I don't care. The idea of just knowing what you actually have to build in service of the overall goal is what I think is important, especially at a company at this level of scale.
Do you write personal goals?
I write personal Emilie goals. I don't write them for like as part of the company.
But you write personal Emilie goals.
Yeah.
And they have nothing to do with work.
No.
Meaning, for example, I write goals
Right.
at the end of the year for the next year.
Yep.
We're in January, whatever, 6th or 7th now. And, you know, one of them is to be on Do Not Disturb for 2 hours a day because I want to be more present.
Yep.
This is a small example. Yep. There's a few of them. Mm-hmm. Do you have those?
I have things like that. I am like, so I have things like that personally. I do, though, for the company, like I have what I know that we absolutely need to do this year that I can help influence. So like one of them is like, well, the one that matters the most this year is without question pass crypto legislation in 2025.
Yeah.
And so like there's other teams, Paul and Faryar and Kara, who are the policy team, who are working in service of that. But I know that that's what we have to laser focus on at the expense of most other things. So those are the things where I'm like, Brian and I always sync up and we're like, these are the things that we absolutely must get done this year. If everything else falls to the side, these are the things.
How often do you and Brian meet?
Once a week.
It's structured.
It's structured. Yeah. Brian is very structured. And I think there's a lot of that, like, Elon, what did you get done this week kind of mentality, which I think is really healthy.
He asks you that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, yeah. And I asked that of my reports and so on. Like, it's like, what did I get done this week? And the other thing that I think is unusual for our one-on-ones is at the end of every one-on-one, there's a juicy feedback piece where maybe he'll say something like, I didn't like the message you articulated to that partner because I think that they may have misinterpreted something, or like something where it's like it was bugging him or something that bugged me about him. And we just say it openly. So it's kind of like it's a forced juicy feedback thing such that you don't really get away with being like, no, there's nothing every single week.
Do you feel like you can actually say juicy feedback to him?
Brian is a unicorn. So like Brian is actually happiest when you give him the hardest feedback. And so like one example of this, back to the coach that we have, Brian and this coach were very rooted in this structure called like conscious leadership. And like the whole idea is, Jubin, like the feeling I have is frustration. The facts of the matter are this, this, and this. My ask of you is this. Like it's a very structured way to give feedback to somebody. And there was like a moment in our conversation where they told me I hadn't used the structure and I lost it. Like I just lost it because I was like I'm trying to say something like deeply personal and meaningful to you, and like you're reverting to the structure. And it was like weirdly a breakthrough in our interactions because he realized he didn't need to use the structure for us to be able to have the harder conversations. And so it was just this like really, we've had these moments where just like, you know, when I came in, I took a lateral move to go from LinkedIn to Coinbase. I actually reported to the COO at the time. And first deal that I'm working on is earn.com, which is the Balaji Srinivasan company. And Balaji is like a savant. He's extremely smart. I have done M&A all my life. And he's like pushing back on these terms and asking me. And I'm like saying things like, well, that's because that's the way it's done. Which like strike that from my vocabulary for the rest of my life because it's the stupidest thing I've ever said, right? And so basically at one point he walked from the deal. And I was like, oh my God, like I just joined this company. Brian is going to fire me. Like this was going to be the incoming CTO. We need a CTO of the company. I remember Ben Horowitz texted me. He was like, it's over. I was like, oh my God. And these moments in my life and career, like I know every single one of them. I looked at them as an opportunity to be like, okay, this is a situation. Like it's not a good look for you. Like go freaking fix it. And so he ghosted me for a while. I finally made contact with him and we worked through it and we got through it. My big lesson from that was like twofold. One is never say like, that's how it's always done. That is really stupid. Like, it's like, no, there should be rationale to the deals can change. The way you operate the business can change. The way that you operated at Kleiner Perkins may be very different from another VC. And like, it's okay. Like there's different ways of doing things. And it doesn't mean that the way that you did it at this place was always the right thing. And the other thing was that like Brian has a lot of trust and faith in me and is willing to work with me through these moments where I'm like, okay, I screwed up. Like I screwed up big time. And same with him. Like he'll have these moments where he'll just be like, you made this recommendation on this thing and I felt uncomfortable with it. And I said, no, I just want to tell you were right. And I was dead wrong on it. Like, so it's like it's a very deep relationship that I value very deeply. And so to your question about like, would I ever leave? I get so much fulfillment out of being in this place where I work on this big mission with this person that I respect so much.
Operationally, do you feel like you run the business uniquely compared to other places? Meaning if you're the COO if there was a guidebook of how to COO,
yeah.
Do you feel like what rules would you violate? Like where do you feel like you run the business very uniquely that others would be like, whoa, that's not what the textbook says.
Well, one thing I've learned over the years is like the COO president role is very different at different companies. And like the way that I think about it best is that you should be doing everything you possibly can in service of product and engineering to run as quickly and effectively as possible. Because like in a product or engine-led company, which is most of the companies that you and I are dealing with, like my function should be serving those functions to be able to be as smooth and frictionless as possible. So Brian owns product and engineering, and then I help run the rest of the business. I think the thing that was cool when we first started, and I always tell every new COO this, is make sure you have like some rough high level version of like what the swim lanes are, and make sure that you have an agreement about like what your role is. Because at the end of the day, most employees want to defer to the founder CEO, which is fine, but your visibility and like empowerment and autonomy gets detracted if you don't have that agreement. So like, here's an example. I believe religiously in this concept of rapids. It's like a decision-making framework that Jeff Weiner taught us, and it came from Bain originally. And it's essentially like recommend, agree, perform, input, decide. And then you have one decision maker for any major decision. And then you have this framework. So it's like, you don't have this passive aggressive behavior in the company of like, I don't know if we're going to get this decision approved. Like, I don't know, is Jubin the decision maker or somebody else? Like, how does this work? Or it's on his desk. He doesn't really care about it, or like it's been in his inbox forever. Like he hasn't said anything to me. Like it's great because it's like a forcing function, and we actually measure how quickly we can make the decision because we want to be able to make quick decisions. But a lot of people will default put Brian as the D. And he is incredibly good about being like, this is squarely Emilie's lane, so she's the D. I can be an input. And so when you have the founder CEO being very like specific about that kind of thing, it helps set a cultural tone for the company in terms of, okay, I don't always have to like default put him there so that he's happy or I'm appeasing his ego or something. He doesn't care.
When Claire Hughes Johnson, when I think of like pantheons of COOs, I put you and her like right up there in my pantheon.
Thank you.
She did this really interesting. I don't know if you read the book or whatever, but anyway,
She's great.
She did this interesting thing where she wrote a how to work with Claire guide. Do you do that?
We have a how to work with Brian doc.
You do?
We do. And it goes back to the point about things like if you're presenting in a Google Hangout, he doesn't want your notifications on. Like it goes to these things where it's like,
what else? Can you tell me what else?
So we generally do things in writing. Brian is a very visual person. This goes to the rapid thing. It's like he may not remember something you said in the room as well as he will if you have it documented. Short and sweet, like clear communication is what we're all about. So how can we say things in the fewest words possible? Brian hates committees. It is a fireable offense to start a committee without him or I approving it. They like just knowing how he is and what he cares about, because we're trying to get rid of bureaucracy. We're a DRI culture. So like Brian believes very much in like one DRI, one throat to choke for anything, not two in a box, not three in a box.
Responsible
yeah,
individuals.
Exactly. So these are the things. He doesn't like when you interrupt people. So I'm from Philly, by the way. So like I interrupt all the time, but he and Fred Ursum, the original co-founders, they believed in this idea of like, don't interrupt somebody when they're speaking. So these are things like potential board members, whatever, like I always try to help them on board in the best way possible so that they are successful in our environment. I recognize it's a unique environment.
What do you mean forming a committee without approval is a fireable offense?
There is a temptation to add committees, and you can call them working groups, you can call them committees.
Give me an example of a committee.
Like a committee to a working group to
like
recommend.
Giants fans at Coinbase?
No. What I mean more is like specifically around projects. So whether it's a product or something like that. And the point is not about it's essentially about removing bureaucracy. It's about DRIs. It means that I don't know how great it is to try to focus on a world of 10 people getting to a consensus on something. I would much rather have Jubin be the DRI, and he works with each of the different functional leads to kind of understand the whole composition of things, the risks that we're taking by launching a feature or something like that, and not trying to like cloud it in this fuzz of layers and layers and layers of bureaucracy and like consensus building. It's just not an effective way for us to operate. I think Elon said something about like, it's much easier to just never add all these different things than it's much harder later to like remove all these things. So when we realized that all these committees were creeping up on us, like we did do an evaluation. We're like, most of these are pointless. Most of these are not worth it. Most of these were just like a smokescreen. It's just like from somebody taking direct responsibility and accountability. We only need these when they are really required by regulators and making sure that we're making good, sound risk committee decisions. Otherwise, like we truly want to have a DRI model. We want to have somebody who's like empowered to make high quality, fast decisions.
What percentage, let's say your family, they all ask you, Emilie, how much of my savings should I put in crypto? There's no way they don't. What do you tell them?
So
this is not investment advice.
Yeah. This is not investment advice.
But like, what do you tell them?
So I'm not an investment advisor either. But like what I would say is when you have the most traditional financial institutions such as like Fidelity and BlackRock and others recommending like 1% to 5% minimum in crypto, to me, that's like it's kind of like a no-brainer. Obviously, my assets are much more heavily crypto oriented. And I wouldn't recommend that for somebody who doesn't fully understand crypto.
Yeah. What about to those that would say, oh, it's too late? The run has already happened.
So this is like, we kind of make fun of people for saying that because every single time when there's a dip, which there will always be a dip, then they never buy during the dip.
Yeah.
So it will always, we believe that there's just like a lot more runway and traction and so on in crypto. Like I think we're just at the beginning stages, but you have to be willing to actually buy at the dips, and you have to be willing to actually hold on. And that's where I think people have a really hard time. They don't understand.
One thing you said to me the first time we talked, which was November of 21, that was whatever, a little over 4 years ago, which is crazy.
Wow.
By the way. Isn't that
is
crazy?
crazy.
It's been 4 years.
That's amazing.
Is Jubin, why don't we treat crypto holdings like real estate? You use this metaphor of real estate to say you hold a house or an apartment for 5 to 10 years. Like, why don't we treat this asset like that? And it's actually been very helpful for me over the last couple of years when our government is trying to stop crypto, and I'm like swallowing, like my everything to be like, don't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
I think back to that advice. I think it's good advice.
The funny thing about crypto is that people think they'll get rich quick. It doesn't work that way. Like, it's almost like there's like a test of your endurance to be able to hold on through the points at which it's just like, it feels desperate. It feels hard. It feels like there's no clear future to it. And then all of a sudden the clouds part and everything kind of works. And so it is kind of fun and gratifying when like you have the world's leading portfolio managers like this year being like, okay, like I definitely got Bitcoin wrong. Just because it's like the evolution of thing that we were just talking about. It's like flexible mindset makes sense. Like digital assets make sense. Maybe I don't like the way they are currently launching, or maybe I don't understand in a world where there's no regulatory framework or anything like that. But like there's something there. And so why would I not try to participate in that and try to understand it better?
Can you imagine working outside of the crypto industry after this?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I love crypto and I love Coinbase, and I will be here for a long time. But to me, it's about like the unique challenges and the unique opportunities of any given. Yeah.
Do you think you want to be a CEO? You know the answer to this.
Someday, yes.
Okay. Like you would actively like to do that.
Someday, yes.
Why?
Because I think that I know how to run a business in a unique way. And I think that it would be fun to be that singular DRI at the top.
Yeah.
And just to kind of build something exactly the way that I have it in my mind.
Do you think it'd be fun knowing all of the CEOs that you know, including Brian, who all tell you it's not fun?
Yeah.
Do you think it'd be fun?
I do think it would be fun. I love to work. I am so freaking lucky because every single job I have ever had has been like incredible. I don't know what I did. Like I have some good karma or something, but my whole evolution has been working with people whom I deeply respect and whom I've been able to like glean little messages and lessons from. Like my first job in Silicon Valley was at Yahoo in 2003. And like I got to work with Jeff Weiner and Stuart Butterfield and Brad Garlinghouse and these incredible people. And I remember I saw Jeff in a room and he's presenting. And I was like, I need to learn as much as I can from that person. Like I want to learn from that person. I worked my ass off there. I mean, we worked there like overnight most of the time. And like as a junior analyst, I got to work on the original Alibaba deal and the Flickr deal and these other things. And I got to work with these incredible people. And that's like the arc of my career. Like I don't know how I got exposed to these incredible people, but it energizes me. It excites me. And I try to take and glean the best I can from each of these people and like what they've taught me. I mean, Jeff is back to the feedback thing. What I've realized in life is that it's much easier to just not give somebody feedback. Like, and that's what most people do, right? It's like, okay, like it's uncomfortable to give you feedback. Jeff was generous enough to give me feedback. Kevin Scott was generous enough to give me feedback where it was like, my boss left and they didn't consider me for the next role to head up corp dev at LinkedIn. And they hired this other person. And Jeff made this comment to me like, you need more gravitas. That stung. That really didn't feel very good. But this person who came in oozed gravitas. And I was like, when I was able to like become truly neutral and objective, I was like, I think I'm supposed to learn from this person. And I did learn from that person. And she did not work out in that role. And when she left quickly, I had been able to glean from her what I needed. So like all this stuff, it's like, we're all on this journey, and I feel so happy and blessed to have been at the places I've been at. And like, I'm fired up for more.
Do you feel like you still work your ass off?
All the time.
What is work your ass off?
It's just, I'm constantly on. I have worked my ass off my entire life. I think one of the most amazing things about Coinbase is that we are remote first. And so I can choose to make time for the things that are truly important to me in the day and think about my schedule in a way where, of course, unexpected things will come up. But like, I know first thing in the morning, I need to like just get my head straight, do some work, not have a zillion meetings until 10 a.m. 10 a.m. I start my meetings. And at the end of the day, I also have a compartment in my schedule for like, I need to be able to unpack these things, get some rapids done, get this, and this done. And so I have the luxury of being able to construct a schedule that works really well for me. It doesn't mean that I'm not working my ass off all the time, but it means that I have some level of control over it, which is incredible.
Do you have any things that you hold sacred? Or is that not even possible in your type of work?
I think the whole thing is like, what are you drawn to? Do you feel energized by the fight? Do you feel energized by like having to be a warrior? Like, is this the right thing for you? For me, it 100% is. And that's why I look for warriors when I'm recruiting people. It's like, do people actually get energized by the challenge, by the fact that like each time they need to learn something new, that the way that they did things before typically won't work at Coinbase, and they have to think about a brand new way of doing something and go outside their comfort zone. Like that for me, for whatever reason, gets me fired up. And so I'm in it.
Do you have a favorite question that you use to test for the quality of warrior?
The first question, so we have a presentation format for any senior candidate. And the first question is, tell me about a time that you've shown resilience and grit, personally or professionally. And you can see very quickly if somebody's being authentic or not, or if they have the level of grit and endurance. Like there's one woman, and I don't mean to be mean, but she literally talked about killing a spider. And it was just stupid. And there are people who have talked about deep struggles in their lives, you know, like being homeless and having to grind through like high school without a place to stay and not having parents who love them, and like getting into a great college and like then just getting a great job and like working their ass off, but not having the typical social like connections and love that that people in their situation would often have. I'm like, I'm sold. I'm like, you got through some hellish stuff. Like something is driving you. There's something deep in you.
I appreciate you doing this. I appreciate that after all of these years, you still have this drive in you. Maybe instead of every 4 years, we could do this every like 1 to 2 years.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
You have no idea how many people come up to me and they're like, I heard you. I still listen to that one on grit. Like it gives me great lessons. So it's cool to yeah, it's all, we're totally sealed together, and I love working with you on this stuff. It's super fun.
Is Coinbase hiring?
Yes, absolutely.
Are there any roles, or what are you hiring for? Anything you want to shout out?
We're focused on hiring across a lot of different dimensions, particularly on the product and engineering side. So I highly recommend folks look at the website and apply. I will tell you, like, it will be a different level of hurdle than a lot of candidates might be used to. Like I said, there's a required cognitive test, required cultural test, and it's a self-filtering thing. Like it's a feature, not a bug. When people say like, I opt out, I'm not doing the cognitive test, I don't believe in it. Cause it's like, we actually believe there's value to cognitive tests. So it's a good thing. Like we have an agreement that you took yourself out of the race because you didn't want to do it.
Increase the quality, decrease the volume.
Exactly. 2021 for every company here, I think, was a volume hiring game.
Yeah.
Now it's 100% on quality. Like our CHRO constantly tells his team, I am not assessing you on speed to hire. It's the last thing I'm focused on.
You know what's interesting? And then I would maybe just leave you with this. We have a fellows program. It's a fellowship. It's an internship. It's like top 1% of students across the country. And we pick a very small cohort of them. And this year, what we decided to do was put a Loom video in. And my recommendation was to ask the question, what's the hardest thing you've ever done personally or professionally in the Loom video?
Yeah.
It's part of the application.
That's great.
And exactly this outcome happened. Quality skyrockets, volume goes down.
Yes.
But the answers, you're like, whoa.
Yes.
And to your point about self-selecting in, I felt that.
Yes. 100%. The funny thing about the CEO, COO review of the packets now is that because there is a review, the candidates are magically better. And I think, again, it forces people in the company to be like, okay, like we're holding a really high bar. We're not squeaking anybody by who isn't going to be top-notch talent.
Well, and this is why what Mark Zuckerberg did today, what Brian Armstrong and the Coinbase team have been doing for 5 years, is this awakening.
Yep.
Where if you stand for something,
Yep.
anything,
Yep.
you will find people that stand for the same things, and you will filter out people that definitely do not stand for those things.
Yes.
What Elon did at Twitter, he gets a lot of flack for. But what he really did was say, I stand for being hardcore.
Yep.
Do you?
Yep.
If you do, this is the place for you.
Yep.
And if you don't, totally fine.
Yes.
This isn't the place for you.
Yes.
And many companies, hopefully more and more, will continue to follow in folks like yours lead of standing for something.
Yep.
Because I actually think it's helpful.
Yes.
Even though a lot of the time we think, oh no, it's going to minimize our applicant pool.
Yep. No, better to have a few really high quality mission aligned candidates than to have a plethora of folks who aren't aligned and who are not going to work out. Either way, like it's not good for them and it's not good for the company.
Emilie, I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thanks, Jubin. Super fun.